Hello everybody, so today I want to start off by offering my 2 cents on the new Film Red trailer that was recently released, because I feel like there's a couple of things in it that could be easily misconstrued. So the first thing is Shanks' statement about Uta being his daughter, and I'm just going to say this pretty bluntly, I think this is clickbait. I don't believe that Uta is actually Shanks' real biological daughter. I think if that were really the case, that would be revealed either in the manga or within the movie itself, but not in a short teaser trailer. The point of a teaser trailer is to get people interested in watching the movie, so they're trying to hook you with these outrageous, crazy statements to, build interest. And I ought to know because I'm a YouTuber and that's essentially what we do. Also, the story of One Piece has a pretty big theme throughout about how you don't have to be blood to be family. We see this all over the place with Luffy, Sabo, and Ace swearing to become brothers, Whitebeard and his crew and how he considers them to be his sons, Sanji and the Vinsmokes and how he doesn't consider his own biological family to actually be his family, but instead he considers Zeph to be his father. We also see this with Dragon taking in Sabo as well. The theme is all over the place, so Shanks calling Uta his daughter doesn't necessarily mean that they're biologically related. The other thing we have to look at here is genetics. So we have Uta here with white and red hair. The white hair is obviously a Lunarian trait, so she's probably half Lunarian. And something that we learned in chapter 1035 about Lunarians is that Lunarians have brown skin. And we see that Uta is very pale. So if we assume that she's a Lunarian, that means that one of her parents must have brown skin. But because she's so pale herself, it would be logical to assume that her other parent would need to be pale. So she would have to have a parent with white hair and brown skin, and another parent with red hair and white skin. And Shanks fits neither of those descriptions because Shanks is tan, like he has tan skin. So unless Shanks has been going to a tanning salon, then maybe that can work out. Also, since we now know that Nika's hair color was white because of Luffy's new mode, I wonder if the Lunarian hair color was something that originated from Nika. And so maybe there's a connection between the sun god and the entire Lunarian race. Another part of the trailer that I think is intentionally deceitful is this one, where Shanks says that there's no such thing as peace and equality in the world. People are using this statement to support their Shanks' evil theories. But I'm pretty sure that this is a line that he delivers while he's still wearing the straw hat, which means that he hasn't met Luffy yet. So if we think about the context, what Shanks is saying makes perfect sense. Because if you remember, after Roger died, the Roger pirates were heartbroken. Absolutely devastated, right? Like Rayleigh has even hinted at the fact that after Roger died, he didn't really see a purpose in living anymore. But then training Luffy is kind of like the thing that sort of reignites his faith, in a way. That's kind of what he says. And I'm guessing that the same thing happened with Shanks, where Shanks heard Luffy say the secret dream that Roger had, and that kind of reignited his faith and his belief, and so that's why he decided to leave the Straw Hat with Luffy. But before then, before he heard Luffy actually say that, I think Shanks had lost hope, in a way. And we know that Luffy's dream has to be about bringing peace and equality to the world. So before he met Luffy, it makes perfect sense why Shanks was saying those things that he says in the trailer. Because at that point in time, before meeting Luffy, Shanks' hope had been shattered. Because his belief was in Roger, who died. Because Roger's goal was to bring peace and equality to the world as well. So when he lost that, I think Shanks just sort of gave up on that until he met Luffy. We get a color spread with this week's chapter, and somebody on Reddit pointed out that Zoro is actually doing his typical little garden statue pose in the background. It appears he's trying to feed Momonosuke a hot dog there. And by the way, I really like Momonosuke's color scheme in this because it kind of gives it the impression that he's glowing. I like how Jinbei appears to be pulling a Zoro in the spread. And then I think Brook is actually pretending to be asleep just so that he can take a peek at Robin's you-know-what. And this entire chapter is literally the definition of setup. Pretty much every page sets up an activity for the climax of the arc. Momonosuke needs to figure out how to use his dragon clouds to save the people of Onigashima. You got people in the capital making their wishes with the lanterns and sending them up, which I guess is set up for Luffy making those wishes come true or something. I find it kind of ironic how one of the villagers in the flower capital says that once the sun rises, everybody's going to go back to being slaves again. And we know that's not true, right? In fact, the opposite is going to happen. Once the sun rises, once the dawn comes, people are going to be free. We also get a scene with Hyogoro and the samurai looking pretty optimistic, which again, kind of removes the tension, because they seem pretty hopeful at this point, They're like, hey, even if we die, our loved ones are going to be okay. I think the best part of that scene is seeing Kid cringe at the enthusiasm that the samurai have for Luffy. It kind of gets me hopeful that Kid might still do something against Kaido, because he did say, he was preparing to fight Kaido when he was, coming down to the live floor, and he didn't really do anything. So hopefully he does something with his King's Hockey, because, what's the point of Kaido mentioning mentioning the fact that Kid has King's Hockey if we're never going to see him use it? And then the whole scene with Kinemon in the beginning of the chapter really reminded me of that scene back in Zou, where Luffy's actually complaining to Momonosuke about how he should be the one to ask him for the alliance, because he's the leader of the samurai. He should be acting like a man. And so eventually Momonosuke does ask Luffy for his help to defeat Kaido, and then Kinemon makes a reflection that is similar to what he says in this chapter, which is that they've been treating Momonosuke as a child instead of treating him like a man, like the leader of the Kozuki clan that he is. And so of course, because Luffy has to outshine everybody in this story, Kinemon says that only Luffy has been the one to treat Momonosuke like a full man, which is kind of what we see depicted by the end of the chapter, where Luffy pretty much tells Momonosuke, "Momo, I believe in you, you got this, I know I can trust you." So the chapter kind of opens up and closes in the same way, with people depositing their trust and confidence in Momonosuke. So it's like both scenes are telling Momonosuke that it's time to grow up. I also feel like that scene with Usopp being carried away by the water also has to serve a purpose. If you look at the background, it kind of seems like Kiku and Kinemon have been pushed off of Hamlet, so I'm wondering where Usopp's going to end up with that. I wonder where he's going to end up getting washed off to. And then we get the scene with Orochi, who conveniently gets freed of the sea stone nail. So apparently Orochi is finally on his last head. He looks like he's burning alive. So I actually figured something out about Orochi. So Orochi initially had 8 heads, right? That's the Yamata no Orochi, so he has 8 heads initially, but then Kaido cuts off 1 during his speech of the New Onigashima, so that's -1, that leaves 7. But then in chapter 1009, the Scabbards actually end up cutting off 6 of Orochi's heads. So that's why he only has 1 life left here, because initially there were 8, -1 that Kaido cut off, -6 that the Scabbards cut off, that leaves him with 1. And so the biggest question that we're left with here is, okay, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna be the one responsible for dealing the final blow to this treacherous Snake Man?
Now the rooftop fight itself in this chapter is just a brief couple of exchanges. So Luffy sends down the Thunderbolt, Gomu Gomu no Thunderbolt, Lightning, whatever. And I gotta be honest here, ever since Luffy's awakening, ever since Oda decided to sort of throw logic a little bit out of the window with this awakening, there have been some action sequences, some action shots that have become a little bit harder for me to interpret. Like there's honestly a part of me that just doesn't feel comfortable not knowing what the rules are for this new awakening. Regardless, I'm going to give this my best shot. So Luffy sends down a lightning bolt, thunderbolt down at Kaido. Kaido counters with a swing of his own, and then Luffy grabs onto the lightning and he starts spinning around. And I think what he does afterwards is that he's actually turning the lightning into rubber. Because after he's done spinning, you get this panel of the lightning being bent, sort of like a slingshot. So I think that, he turned the lightning into rubber so that he could catapult himself down towards Kaido. And he was actually inflating his leg as he shot himself down. So he was coming down towards Kaido with an attack, but that never went anywhere because he got clubbed in the face. And then Kaido goes on to make what I believe is the most important comment of this entire chapter. So he says, "The world is convenient that way. Roger didn't have any fruit powers because only Hockey can transcend all." So this is kind of like upping up the stakes for the future, right? For the future antagonists. Saying that, like, even if Luffy has like this god Nika devil fruit power, it still won't be enough. It almost felt as if Kaido was telling Luffy like, no, you don't understand. Roger was an absolute Chad. Chad of the century.
So now I'm guessing that this is actually a picture of all the people that Kaido has a man crush on. I like how in addition to hyping up Roger, Kaido's comment also ends up hyping up other non-Devil Fruit Hockey users, such as Shanks, Mihawk, and Garp. And Kaido should know because he was in God's Valley, right? And so the Battle of God's Valley was won by 2 non-Devil Fruit Hockey users that were Roger and Garp. So Kaido should know. I also think that Kaido's comment is pretty clear-cut foreshadowing because it probably means that Akainu also has Conqueror's Hockey, just like Sengoku, because they both ended up being fleet admirals. And then also Blackbeard has the ability to be able to negate devil fruit powers. So it could also be considered a warning, right? That when Luffy fights Blackbeard, Blackbeard will take away Luffy's devil fruit power. But just because he does that doesn't mean that Luffy won't be able to win against Blackbeard. And Kaido's words remind me of the same sort of humbling effect that Peckham's words had back in Fishman Island when he told Caribou that Logia users that think they're invincible often get defeated or die young. And Kaido uses Dragon Twister Demolition Breath, which is an attack that he performs by spinning his lower body and creating these wind sights. So he sends them up towards Luffy. So I kind of get the impression that Oda was using Kaido in this chapter to sort of re-expose Luffy's weaknesses to remind us, the reader, about Luffy's weaknesses. Because in the last couple of chapters, Luffy's Devil Fruit Awakening has been shining a lot. Like, it's so versatile, its adaptability is tremendous, it has a bunch of strengths, and so I think this chapter is sort of like Oda sort of humbling that power a little bit, sort of grounding it and saying like, wait a minute guys, the story's not over. Luffy's not invincible just yet.
Now, something that I did find a little bit strange was that when Kaido makes this hockey comment, right, he sends Luffy down towards the floor, towards the ground. And the ground is obviously, because of Luffy's awakening, it's rubber. So he actually uses the ground to bounce back at Kaido. And as he's bouncing back, Luffy does something that I thought was kind of weird, which is that he's coating his arms with basic armament hardening. I guess I'm kind of confused as to why he would use basic armament hardening to protect himself, to try and block the attack. Because in chapter 1045, Kaido specifically says, he mentions that Gear 5th is already using both Armament Hockey and Conqueror's Hockey at the same time. And Conqueror's Hockey is the strongest type of hockey that you can coat yourself with. So if Luffy's already doing that, I'm not sure why he activated like basic armament hardening in that scene. So the rules for hockey, just like the rules for Luffy's Devil Fruit Awakening, I feel like could use a little bit more clarification. Anyway, we get this great looking panel of Kaido just hitting a home run with Luffy. And apparently the name of his attack is a reference to one of the Mio, one of the 5 Wisdom Kings. If you remember when Hyogoro first saw Luffy in Gear 5th, in Gear 4th, he said, oh, he looks like one of the Mio. So there's a lot of references to that, and the Mio are obviously, they're these 5 Wisdom Kings from Buddhism. And so the name of Kaido's attack is actually associated with the Mio, the Wisdom King, that actually conquered or destroyed the Lord of Death, or the Lord of the Underworld, which, as we know, is also named Enma. I like how after Kaido lands his attack, because Luffy is in Toon mode, or, because of his cartoon power, you get the little birdies flying around his head.
Another thing that I noticed about Kaido's comment is that it actually ends up helping Luffy out mid-fight, because immediately after Kaido mentions the fact that Haki is superior to Devil Fruit powers, that's when Luffy grabs him and starts charging up his giant Haki-infused fist attack up in the cloud. And it's not just Conqueror's Haki that Luffy is infusing into that attack. We also actually see that the punch is getting charged up with lightning as well. So it's both Conqueror's Haki plus the lightning. So I definitely think that this attack is actually going to land and damage Kaido, but I remember that Oda said that he knew that the readers would not be satisfied if Luffy just won by punching Kaido, that we wouldn't be satisfied if that were the case. So Luffy's gonna land this punch and he's gonna knock Kaido out temporarily, and Kaido will be on the ground and, kind of like fainted or whatever, but then Kaido's gonna show us his awakening. He's gonna get back up. I feel like that's what's going to happen. And then we'll get awakened Luffy versus awakened Kaido. And again, I can't get over Kid's face in this chapter. He's so upset that people are praising Luffy. So I'm curious if that's going to pay off at all.
Now, before Luffy's giant fist comes out of the cloud, there's a very brief scene of Kaido using Boro Breath on Luffy to get Luffy to let go of him. And that scene reminded me so much of Attack on Titan. I believe it's season 3. It's the scene where Armin has hooked his maneuver gear onto the Colossal Titan's teeth because they're trying to take him out. And so the Colossal Titan is actually burning Armin alive, but he still won't let go because they have a strategy to take him out. Something that I noticed reading the official translation is that there's this panel with the samurai in the live floor, and one of the beast pirates tells them, like, are you crazy? Like, all of you guys are gonna die. And then Hyogoro says, what's wrong with that? Like, what's wrong with dying? And then immediately we cut to Usopp, and Usopp's like, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. So the contrast there, the shift, that transition was comedy gold. And then when it comes to the final page of the chapter, like, initially I did think, like, did Luffy make his hand bigger so that he could touch the island and maybe turn it into rubber? But then he does tell Momonosuke, like, you have to get this island out of the way. So again, it seems like he's entrusting that task to Momonosuke. And then I remembered that Luffy actually is grabbing Kaido with one arm. So I'm wondering if it's going to be like a paddle ball situation where Luffy's just going to be able to do this to Kaido.
I'd like to end this video by talking about the absolute masterpiece of an anime adaptation that was episode 1015. Not only was last night's episode better than the actual chapter that it was based off of, which was chapter 1000, but it was also actually better than this week's chapter as well. The animation quality, the production value of this entire episode was off the charts, unlike anything I've ever seen in One Piece. They took the source material and added little details, like, for example, example, the fact that, Ace had that falling asleep gag that we hadn't seen in a long time. They even showed Kaido mention the fact that he was intercepted by Shanks and stopped from going into Marineford. And coincidentally, a lot of the stuff that was brought up in the episode is actually stuff that I talked about earlier in the video, like the amazing juxtaposition of Luffy and Roger's secret dream that restores hope in people. It was such a well-crafted and animated scene that it's literally the definition of a home run in anime form. My favorite scene in the entire episode, though, is that little snippet that we get before the intermission where we see the supernova making their way up to the rooftop. Zoro's flying through the air. Law is pretty much nonchalant throughout the entire thing. The music is absolutely on point in terms of building up hype. You got this special type of ominous dim red lighting, which coupled with the size of Kaido and Big Mom kind of gives the scene the impression that it's actually from Attack on Titan. And then as Luffy is charging his Rio, you got this amazing montage of the sacrifices that people have made in order to liberate Wano. Add the We Are theme in the background to the Sun God Nika reference with the Red Rock, plus the additional expressions of Big Mom and Kaido of pure disbelief, and it just makes for a perfect closing. The only thing I didn't like about the episode was the preview for next episode, because it's a repetitive recap filler episode. But given that 10:15 was so good,
I'm going to allow that.
The episode was phenomenal. It's definitely one of the best anime episodes of One Piece. Like, period. Top 5 minimum. Top 5 minimum. And it's one of those episodes that I feel like if you show them to somebody that doesn't know anything about One Piece, I think that just watching the episode will give them a sense of appreciation for what One Piece is about. It's a beautiful piece of art, and I'm grateful that it exists. And I'm grateful that there are people out there, in this case, the staff for this episode, that are dedicated enough to their craft that they can come up with these beautiful artworks. I mean, just watching the episode made me feel like I was in a museum, just admiring this really like amazing piece of artwork that I have no business admiring. If you haven't checked it out, go watch it. If you have watched it like me, I'm going to go watch it again. So that's what I'm doing right now. And thank you for taking the time to watch this right now. Thank you for all of your support. Take care, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.